Welcome to the NCIA's Voice of Cannabis. Join hosts Aaron Smith and Jimmy Young as they dive into the pulse of the cannabis industry, featuring weekly guests who break down big topics like standardization, evolving regulations, and exclusive member spotlights. Get informed, get inspired. And now, here are your hosts, Aaron and Jimmy.
Hi, everybody. Welcome back to the episode 2 of the NCIA's Voice of Cannabis presented by Buds Group. I am PCM TV founder Jimmy Young, and I'm joined by...
I'm Aaron Smith, co-founder and executive director of the National Cannabis Industry Association. So excited to be bringing this podcast back because it's an opportunity to really shine a light on the broad membership, the diverse membership that make up NCIA. We have 2 guests on today that I think really exemplify that, and I'm going to just let them really introduce themselves first, and we'll start with Arana, the travel agency.
Thanks so much, Aaron and Jimmy. Really happy to be here. My name is Arana Hankin-Biggers. I'm the co-founder and president of the travel agency. We were the 3rd licensed dispensary to open up in New York State in partnership with the Doe Fund, a not-for-profit that works with formerly incarcerated and formerly homeless Black and brown men. We're about to open up our 4th licensed dispensary in a couple of weeks. Super excited to be here.
And we also have Shane Johnson with Bay Medica.
Shane Johnson here, founder and general manager of Bay Medica. We focus on the research, development, and commercialization of rare or minor cannabinoids.
And there are quite a few cannabinoids, right? Everybody seems to focus on one, the THC, the intoxicating cannabinoid, but there are so many of those minor cannabinoids, Shane. It's almost like, you know, you're digging for gold to find another cannabinoid that you can name.
Well, I think the bigger challenge is what do these cannabinoids do? So I think most scientists at this point will agree there are probably somewhere on the order of 150 cannabinoids in the plant, and you're correct. I mean, everybody seems to know about THC and CBD in many cases, but there are a lot of other ones out there, and most of them have their own unique effects, and certainly in combination can provide effect-based outcomes for patients or consumers who take them.
So we all know about the cannabinoids, but maybe the FDA could actually take a crash course. I'm just saying. Okay, let's go back to Arana and let's talk about the importance of socially responsible capitalism. It sounds like you have it built in to the travel agency mission.
Yeah, it's definitely something that we believe strongly in. I mean, cannabis here in New York State was birthed under this premise, right, of giving opportunities to folks that were harmed by the racist war on drugs. And we're definitely doing that with our partnership at our first dispensary and the subsequent dispensaries where we partnered with individuals with cannabis convictions. So it's something we firmly believe in. And we believe that cannabis should, the industry as a whole should be looking to give back.
Absolutely. And it still disgusts me that over 200,000 people were arrested for possession of cannabis in the year of 2024. That has to stop. Okay, it really does. Aaron, I'm going to ask you this question because in the industry, social justice is very important, as is business development. So how do you, as someone who's trying to impact change at the federal level, how do you identify and kind of sell that those initiatives to the various elected officials that you have to deal with?
Well, the good news is that we've aligned, because we've created a legal cannabis industry. I think in a lot of ways we've aligned the motivation, the profit motive that the industry has, along with the doing the right thing motive that those of us in the advocacy space have been pushing for moving cannabis out of the Controlled Substances Act, making it legal, stop the arrests. It's in the interest now of the industry to do that. And so this means that there's more resources theoretically put behind the advocacy that social justice groups or formerly incarcerated people didn't have before there was an industry. And there's groups now out there like the Last Prisoner Project that have really been at the forefront of this. And I think it needs to be for anyone who's listening, who's advocating for industry issues federally or in their states. It needs to be at the centerpiece of everything we do, is that we're here to end cannabis prohibition and stop putting people in cages for using a plant. People who, by and large, are disproportionately people of color and other marginalized communities. And it's always going to be paramount to what NCIA does. And I think it needs to be for the entire movement.
Absolutely. And getting back to the good doctor, Shane here, what's the biggest challenge right now for you? Is it access to research money or is it something else?
Well, certainly the capital markets, the NIH dollars, which fund a lot of research, all of those are challenges right now. But broadly speaking, I think one of the biggest challenges that the industry overall faces is one of misinformation or lack of adequate information. So in terms of the rare cannabinoids that we focus on figuring out how to make, what do they actually do? And that takes money to do that research. And it takes, developing a deeper understanding. It's also, how are these compounds derived? I think Aaron said in your launch episode of this podcast something about, this is about cannabinoids, not about hemp or marijuana or whatever. It's about cannabinoids, and I would echo that. Shouldn't really matter where they come from or how, kind of the definitional source. What really should matter is the quality of the product that's being made, the understanding of the purity and impurity profile, et cetera.
And Arana, being a retailer, if you will, in New York City, the consumer that comes in seems to be very focused on the percentage of THC in all the products. But we all know, I think, in this conversation, that it's not just the THC percentage that dictates the effect of the plant, correct?
That is correct. And we do our best to educate consumers about the various different cannabinoids and terpenes and do all we can to give them insight into the effects of the plant on their endocannabinoid system.
And do people still come in and basically look at your menu and say, what has the highest THC? I want to get an eighth of that or a half of that. I mean, that still happens, doesn't it?
Oh, certainly, without a doubt. But I think we do our best to steer folks to ensure they're finding a product that will allow them a more purposeful consumption experience.
After all, it is a plant medicine. This is something, again, that I harp on all the time. A lot of people like to put it in the drug category, and certainly that's been the case over 100 years. Okay, I get it. And yes, we have a Controlled Substances Act that was written in 1971. I'm of the opinion, by the way, as usual, I'm not afraid to share my opinions, that Controlled Substances Act should be rewritten based on the research that we know now about all of those drugs. And speaking of research, let's get Shane Johnson's opinion about that. Should the CSA be rewritten?
Well, I mean, yes, in many regards, or certainly when it comes to cannabinoids, I think, look, I mean, this goes to the broader regulatory challenges in the industry right now today. I mean, marijuana federally still Schedule 1, discussion of rescheduling it. THC as a drug is not Schedule 1. It's permitted as a drug. So, and CBD is not even scheduled and also a drug. So it's a little bit of a mess when it comes to cannabinoids and how they're being categorized today.
Yeah, and education is still the key to all of this. And I've interviewed so many smart scientists, researchers. It's a fascinating industry on so many elements. Aaron, how do you prioritize what is the most important thing for the industry? Are there so many issues? How do you kind of say, this is the one we need to tackle because we think we can make a change here?
I mean, it's, for us, it's about what's politically possible now and versus what, we want to see long-term. Long-term, we want to see cannabis removed from the CSA, as you mentioned, and a whole new regulatory framework for cannabinoid products. Is that going to happen this year? No. So this year, we're working on rescheduling to get cannabis moved to Schedule 3, which would resolve some of the tax issues and other issues that the industry faces, but not all of them. Working on the banking issue, some of the more lower hanging fruit. And then, I think this is really an incremental process. And as we get some wins under our belt, under the lower hanging fruit, that provides momentum that we need to go further and ultimately get to that place where we see comprehensive federal reform.
Yeah, absolutely. Arana, I've got to come back to you because we had a news item in our show, Cannabis Coast to Coast News, about the lack of seed to sale tracking in New York State. Now, I thought Metric owned that market, but there's another software program I believe that New York is using Can you give me a little background on that? And are you using a seed to sale tracking system in the travel agency?
So BioTrack is in the process of rolling out in New York State right now. It is not officially rolled out, but we're getting ready. We certainly firmly believe in rolling out a seed to sale tracking program for a number of reasons, but primarily to ensure that our consumers are consuming safe and tested product, because there's, right now there's a potential risk of inversion, and we don't 100% know for sure where all the flower is coming from and the cannabis products are coming from.
Dr. Shane, the lab situation in this industry is another one of those little developments that have happened. Certainly here in Massachusetts, which is where I've lived for most of my life, except for me. But I've been in New England my whole life, and lab testing of the products are very important. And especially when you go back to the fact that consumers go into many of these dispensaries just looking for the highest percentage of THC. How accurate would you like to see the lab testing become? How's that? Is that a good question?
I'd like to see it be a lot more accurate than it is, or really have better standards or standardization. So right now there is no unifying testing protocol that is required of all the labs. So state to state, and even within the same state, you have different labs that have developed their own protocols, and as long as they fall within certain frameworks, they're okay, quote unquote okay. But what that leads to is you see a lot of variability in terms of lab testing. I mean, I've seen the exact same product go to half a dozen different labs and have the percentage of the potency of THC, for instance, vary by 20, 30, 40%, not absolute, but relative percent. So that's huge. And what it leads to in some manufacturers literally do lab shopping, because generally people will pay for higher numbers, and it's a huge issue for the industry. So I think, something that we like to do at Bay Medica, we've obviously focused on identifying the best possible labs, but for any product that we make, we get a minimum of 2 independent lab tests in addition to our own internal testing, and we're looking for concordance, where we want those 2 certificates of analysis, COAs, to be very similar to each other, and if they're not, then we do a deeper dive.
And those COAs are very, very important. Arana, how difficult has the lab experience been for you and the travel agency?
Oh, we don't deal with the labs, but we definitely diligently review COAs, and we're holding our processors and our brands to a higher standard, because we don't believe that the standard in New York State is stringent enough. So we actually use standards from Massachusetts. We very closely review all the COAs to make sure there are no instances of mold and yeast and other bacterias. And so it's super important to us. So we're very careful about the products that we bring in. We review the lab results, we sample them, we understand how they're processed and their methodology. Sometimes, most of the time, visit the facilities to ensure that we're providing the top quality, the best quality product here in the state.
Is there an association in New York of just dispensary owners?
Oh my goodness, that's a very good question and very complicated question, Jimmy. I think in New York State, it's still a very nascent industry, and it's been really difficult to bring the industry together. There's been a couple of organizations, but they're unfortunately still very fractured. And, just to talk about what Aaron does, how it's so important and crucial to have an organization that is unified and collectively representing the industry's interest. And we don't have that in New York. And I think that's a huge fail, and it's going to prevent us from really growing a successful, thriving, healthy industry.
I think there's actually the farmers that are growing the product have an alliance or something like that. Because I remember interviewing somebody from the New York Growers Association.
They do indeed, yeah.
Would you think that the dispensary people would want to share? But in New York, it's so unique because of all the illegal legacy storefronts that are open. Aaron, you understand the challenges of New York City and how difficult it's been, and the rain has been part of that. But what can the NCIA do to help the industries in New York get through this time?
Yeah, this is something, frankly, I would not have predicted, 5 or more years ago, that you would have states where we would, make cannabis legal, and then you would have these unregulated operations just, continuing to operate. And then because it's legal and I think, there's a fear of political backlash, the cities aren't cracking down. And so this is not just a New York problem. It's an issue in California. I've had recently speaking with somebody in Ohio. It's very noticeable in New York, being the biggest city, and seeing cannabis sold in bodegas and some dispensaries that look pretty legit but are not licensed. And I think what NCIA is doing is advocating for more uniform policy so that you have federal legalization. So it's much harder to kind of fly under the radar if you're illegal. At the state level, I think I really do want to echo what Arana had said, that it's very important that the dispensaries work in the state capital and in the city through an association or in some way to work together, because they all have the same interest in making sure that the illegal operators go out of business. And we're not trying to say that, somebody selling cannabis illegally should be behind bars the rest of their life, but they shouldn't be allowed to do that in a regulated market without a license.
Right. And especially with all the investment money that's behind some of these dispensaries just to open. Arana, I can't put you on the spot because I'd really like to know just how much money that you really needed to open your doors. However, I know it was a lot. Is that accurate?
That is absolutely accurate. Yes.
One of the things we need to do is lower that barrier to entry so that the legacy operators have an easier, entry point. That's one way to deal with the illegal operations.
Absolutely. Dr. Shane Johnson, how do people get in touch with you if you'd like them to?
Absolutely welcome it if people want to reach out. Best way to get in touch with me is email, and that's SJOHNSON Johnson @Bay Medica, BAYMEDICA.com.
That was good and well spelled as well. Arana, how many travel agency outlets are there right now in New York?
Soon to be 4, but 3 open today and 4 in about 2 more weeks. We're opening.
And where can we find them in New York? It's a big city. I get lost there every time I go.
Oh my gosh. Well, the first one we opened is on 13th and Broadway, just south of Union Square. We have one in downtown Brooklyn across from the Barclays Center and Atlantic Terminal. And there's one on 5th Avenue between 47th and 48th. And then Soho's coming online in 2 weeks, which will be on Broadway, just south of Houston, next to the Target store.
Expansion is good for the industry, right, Aaron? Expansion is good. She's opening up more stores. This is good, right?
Wonderful to hear it. And really was pleased to have you guys here joining us for this, one of these first episodes, and really goes to show that, it takes all kinds to really make a movement out of this industry, and look forward to these kinds of conversations going forward.
Absolutely. And we will have another one in episode 4 when we welcome in the head of Bud's Group. Now, his name's not Bud. His name is Rick Leneve, originally from Accounting Buds, but now they're evolving into Bud's Groups. And we'll have episode 4 next week that we will be releasing on Wednesdays at 12 noon Eastern. And thank you for watching. Remember to like, share, and subscribe to the NCIA's Voice of Cannabis podcast, supported and presented by Bud's Groups.
We focus solely on the cannabis space. The cannabis is not just another item that we've put on our website and said, oh, we're in cannabis. We do cannabis and cannabis only, and we focus on cannabis day in and day out. So with Bud's Group, we're going to not only work with you and give you advice, we're going to help see your project through to completion. And you're going to find at the end of the day, it'll be a fraction of a cost of working with a larger firm, because our executives are focused just on cannabis and we run lean.
Looking for PR that over-delivers on expectations? At Maverick Public Relations, they pair big agency experience with personalized attention. From launching award-winning brands to securing top-tier media hits, their data-driven communications team helps visionary leaders and entrepreneurs rise above the media noise. Maverick PR is responsive, collaborative, and relentless about results and ROI. Visit themaverickpr.com and make headlines together.
That's a wrap on this episode of the NCIA's Voice of Cannabis. If you liked what you heard, smash that like and subscribe button, follow us on your favorite platform, and share this episode with your network. We've got more industry movers, shakers, and game changers coming your way every week. So don't miss a beat. Tune in next time for another fresh episode with Aaron and Jimmy.